Hello all you fellow YouTubers out there. Welcome back to the channel. This episode we are going to be getting into some updates on the LS1 block and tell you guys what's going on with that. We'll get into that in a minute and also show you guys how to disassemble your pistons. Mainly just take the rings off of your pistons if you don't have a tool, and how to clean up your pistons if you're going to reinstall your old pistons in your motor. So first we'll get into what's going on with the block, and then I will get into how to take apart those pistons. Okay guys, so I've got the LS1 block here cleaned and prepped and ready to reassemble. And as you can see, I do have the cam bearings removed. The only problem I have is I do not have a cam bearing installer, and I have access to a universal one, but I don't like to use them because they use kind of an expanding type flange for installing the bearings, and I don't really like to use that one. I ordered one specifically for LS1, well, any LS block actually, and it is specifically sized just for the cam bearing journal, and so it does not mark up the bearings at all. And unfortunately, it's on back order, just like everything else in the world. I was hoping to have it by now, but I don't have it yet, so I'm gonna wait a couple more days. Hopefully it says it ships. If not, I'm gonna have to borrow the universal installer and get these bearings put in, because I've already ordered all the bearings to the block and already have all the bearings to the block. They've come in about a week ago, and I'd like to get the short block at least put together as soon as possible and get that on video for you guys. But I am short that cam bearing installer, and I have checked with everybody I know in the business in the town I live in, and nobody has what I need. So either borrow the one universal one or wait for the LS1 bearing installer to show up. At this current time, I have not yet ordered anything for the top end. I mean, basically cam valve springs and new lifters. Still not quite in the budget for that. Gonna take another couple paychecks to be able to afford that, because I am not like some of the YouTubers out there that just seem to have an endless supply of money. So in the meantime, I'm going to show you guys how to take apart these pistons and clean them. I'm going to show you guys how to get your pistons from looking like this to this. Okay, I'm going to show you guys how to get the piston rings off of these pistons if you do not have the piston ring tool. And the tool is actually designed to go in the ring, spread it, and then you lift the ring off the piston. Now, I've never used a tool on my own builds. I do it this other way. I know engine builders are going to freak out on me and say, you have to use a tool, you'll ruin the rings or you'll hurt the piston if you do it the other way. I've been doing this other way on my own pistons for years now. I've never broke a ring, never bent a ring, never had a problem. And all you have to do is slightly lift the ring off while twisting it clockwise. And I'm doing this kind of slowly so you can see it. And as I twist it clockwise, it'll roll off the piston. And again, I can do this a lot faster. I'm just showing you guys this slowly to explain how you do it. And the most important thing is, if you're reusing rings or if you are going to be using new rings, either way, make sure you do not forget the orientation on the rings, which is up and which is down. So be sure to set them down in the correct orientation to remember, because you do not want to install these upside down. And you want to remember the correct order, which is the top compression ring, which is the second ring, which is the oil ring. Very, very critical. And again, you can do this with every single one of these rings. It's really not a big deal. You just lift up the ring and just gently roll it off. And on the oil rings, they're just a little bit different. With the oil rings, you may want to use a little pick to grab it, because the oil rings, when you try to grab them, they don't stick out as far as the compression rings. So you may want to use a pick to grab that and help you roll it off. Just be really careful with these rings because they are a lot thinner, they're a lot more fragile, and especially the middle oil ring, and I can't remember what that specific ring is called in between the two, but that one bends really easy in any direction, so you have to be careful with that one. But it is really flexible and comes off a lot easier anyway, so it doesn't really matter with that one as the other two. It comes off a little bit easier. Same as before, and these rings just slip off really, really easily. And normally, depending on the piston, but usually the rings actually have to come off before the center ring, and vice versa. When you put it back together, center ring goes on, and then the two outer rings go on the oil ring. Now, since I am doing a budget build on this, reusing the pistons, reusing the rods, just putting new bearings on the bottom end. So the goal is to get these cleaned up before I put them back in, get all this carbon off, get all this burnt oil inside these grooves off. And the best way to do this that I've found is take a fresh razor blade. Be careful not to dig into the aluminum, obviously, but you just want to use the razor blade and just glide it across the top and remove all that carbon. And you want to push down with, some moderate force. It's just more about having a very shallow angle, like you were sharpening a blade versus trying to, kind of like you're trying to slice something off the top. You want to have a shallow angle, not a steep angle. That way you don't cut into your piston and mark it. And that gets off 95% of all the crap on top. And then once you have that cleaned up, that's when your red Scotch pad comes in. And then you just want to abrade that enough with the Scotch pad to get all of the rest of the carbon and stuff off the top of the piston. I also do the sides of the piston and the ring areas as well. I'm not going to worry about the rest of it. I'm only worrying about the surfaces that directly contact the bore. Okay, remove most of the carbon off the face of the piston and as well as the skirts, the ring area. Now to get a lot of this, it's mainly like, some of it's kind of carbon, some of it's just burnt oil inside the ring grooves. There's a couple ways to do this. If you have like a plastic pick, that's really good to use. A lot of times what I use is the backside of a razor blade, because this is actually aluminum. Most of you know that, and where it won't really gouge or dig into the piston where it's aluminum. If you're careful, you can use that to gently scrape that out. I definitely do not use the other side of the razor blade where it's steel. That will definitely gouge the piston. So either way you want to do this, just gently sweep that in there to get most of that stuff out. And then what I like to do is take my brake cleaner and just spray out the grooves, and then take a clean rag, and wipe inside the grooves to remove all the residue. So there you go. There's the piston that's fairly cleaned off. Ran brake cleaner through the rings and wiped it out with a rag, and the ring grooves, I should say, are fairly clean. And now I'm going to clean off the piston rings and get them reinstalled. Okay, I'm going to try and do this while looking through the camera, so hopefully this works out, installing these rings. But I'm going to start off with the center oil ring here. And I should say beforehand, I'm just gonna put the rings on. I'm not gonna clock them like they're supposed to be. I'll do that when I install the pistons. But normally you wanna clock the rings at least 90 degrees off from opening to opening. I actually prefer to do 180 off. A lot of times your service manuals will actually tell you, specifically LS1, they will tell you where to clock the rings on these, and I believe that information is online. LS1s like to have a specific setting where the piston is facing forward, where the ring openings should be. So I would refer you to a Google search on the position of that, because off the top of my head, I cannot remember exactly where they are supposed to be. Put the second oil ring on. Now these are pretty flexible again, but some care is in order. And now for the two compression rings, and for these, you definitely do want to be very careful with these. Top ring's usually the easiest. And again, I'm going to just put these rings in random positions, and I will clock these rings in the position they're supposed to be when I put the motor in. You definitely do not want to have rings like this on top of each other. You will have a bad compression seal and definitely lost compression if you situate them like that. So just make sure that they are, at the very least, not in line with each other. So I've got 4 pistons down, 4 to go. And again, yes, I am reusing the old pistons and the old rings. Most people would say, oh my God, why would you do that? Well, budget, and done it before. It's not the best situation, but if I was doing a full engine rebuild and I had a better budget, I would definitely be using new rings. The thing is with the GM rings, they are really, really good rings, and the mileage on the motor is low enough that I am comfortable with doing it this way. Your mileage may vary, literally. And just so you guys don't completely bite my fucking head off here, I did do a bump hone on all the cylinders. I just used a ball hone up and down about a half a dozen times just to rescore these walls up a little bit, just so it will help with sealing, hopefully. And they turned out fairly well. There are a couple of cylinders, if I can get it to focus here, that have some very, very slight marks in a couple of them that did not clean out. Again, I did not take any material off this. I measured the cylinders before and after, and they're still measuring right around the 3.898 mark. There's a little bit of variance by 1 or 2 thousandths from cylinder to cylinder, but it will be good enough for this rebuild. I will say that one thing I am happy about is, because of what I'm seeing in the cylinders, this block could definitely be honed 5 thousandths over and have oversized pistons put in it, and it would be good for a full rebuild in the future. So I think what I'm doing is the best situation with the budget at hand, and still preserving the block so that it can be fully rebuilt one more time, unless there is a catastrophic failure in the block in the future. So again, I know that's probably not the best way to remove piston rings and clean your pistons. There's definitely a lot better ways to do it, more professional ways to do it, but if you are on a budget and you want to do it at home, that is the best way I've found to do it without damaging your pistons and your rings. So please, again, don't bite my fucking head off in the comments, okay? I know there's better ways to do it. I know the proper way to do it, but I'm showing you guys how to do it if you do not have the proper tools and you're trying to do it on a budget. And again, while it won't be professional, it will get the job done, especially for those of you guys that, again, are on a budget and just want to get your vehicle back together and running. Anyway, thanks again for watching, everybody. There will be more videos to come, hopefully soon, on putting this LS1 back together, and I'll try and do kind of a detailed description on the proper steps on how to check your clearances on your bearings and the proper torque for the bolts, and getting at least the short block back together again. Until then, see you guys next time.